Hey there, how's it going everyone? In this series of videos, we're going to be building a simple web application using the Django web framework with Python. So Django is a framework that allows you to build web applications in a very fast way. It is a batteries included framework that helps you to build web applications without having to worry about external libraries for implementing functionality. It comes with inbuilt support for database querying, templating, URL mapping, and so on, as you're going to see in this video. So we are going to be building this simple application, which I'm calling Keep Notes. So it's going to be a simple note keeping application. So as you see, we are on the front page of the application. We can be able to create an account. So when I go to the sign up page, I can be able to create an account. Let's say test test user, and you can also input password. So let's say put in a password and then you confirm the password. Now when we save this, we're going to be redirected to the login page, and the message is going to show that our account has been created successfully. Now let's try to log in with a username. So let's use the test user we created. So we're going to also be adding the password and then we log in. So when you log in, we are presented to this page where we can be able to add notes, check account settings, and log out. So let's try out the functionality of adding notes. So when we add notes, a form is going to pop up where we enter a title and the description. So let us add some tests. So we can say test title, and then you can also say this is a test description. So we can go ahead and save this. Now when we save this, we have our title being rendered dynamically back to our page. Now we can be able to update this note, so we can be able to update this note, so we can add title description updated. We can also be able to add the title description, the title updated, the note title updated, and the note description updated. So when I click update, this is going to be updated on our front end. We can also be able to create others. So let's create another test. So we can be able to add test 2. We can also be add test. We can also add test 2 description, and we can save this. So let's go ahead and save this. So when we save, we are having two notes update, two notes created within our app. So we can be able to also delete. When I click delete, we see that that note has been deleted. We can also be able to update our settings here, and we can be able to also log out. So we have a login again. So when you click login again, it will redirect us to the login page, and that's the application you're going to build for this series. So let's get started with setting up this application. So I'm going to open up my Visual Studio Code, and the first thing I'm going to do is to open a new file. So I'm going to open a folder, and I'm going to open this folder on my desktop within my coding folder. You can feel free to create it wherever you want. So I'm just going to come and say I'm going to create a new folder, and this new folder is going to be keep. I'm just going to call it keep series. You can call it whatever you want. So I'm going to select that folder, keep series, and then select the folder. When I select a folder, I've opened it within my Visual Studio Code. So the first thing I'm going to do is to create a virtual environment, which is going to separate the project-specific dependencies from our system's Python dependencies. So I'm going to open up my terminal. I'm using git bash. So after opening up my terminal, let me close this and I open it again. So let me try to Let me try to stop this. Okay, so that's going to stop the application. So I'm going to run the terminal. So when my terminal opens, the first thing I'm going to do is to create my virtual environment. So I'm going to run Python -m, then env, then create the virtual environment with env. So the virtual environment is going to be created within the folder env. So after the virtual environment has been created, the next thing we'll do is to activate the virtual environment. So I'm going to do that by saying source env, then scripts, then activate. So after activating my virtual environment, the next thing is going to be to install Django. So I'm going to run pip install Django framework. After installing the Django framework, what we're going to do is to create our project. So as our project is installing, the next thing will be to create a .git ignore file. So we're going to create one. So I'm going to say new file. Then I said .git ignore. Now what this file is going to do is to ignore whatever we do not want to add to our Git repository. So we may put in the Python binary files like the PyC files and the PyCatch folder. So we also add this and our virtual environment as well. So we're going to say env. So after doing that, I'm going to close my git ignore. Now our Django has been installed. Now the first thing we're going to do is to set up our project. So we're going to run Django admin start project. So we're going to start project and we're going to call this keep project. We're going to set it to our root folder. So I want our money.py to be within our root folder. So I'm going to say dot. And once this runs successfully, you're going to see that our money.py file is going to be created within our root project. Now, when you see that what we have right now is the keep project, which is going to be the project that holds all our settings for our application. And on this, we shall be able to create and register other apps, just as you're going to do. Now, to test whether everything is working, we're going to come to our terminal, run python manage.py, run server. So this is going to run our development server at port 8000, and we're going to go and test that within our application. So I'm going to come to localhost 8000. This seems to have run the other application, so I'm going to stop the server and I'm going to run it at another port. So I'm going to say port 8001. Now this is going to run our application at port 8001. So when I go to port 8001, we're going to see that our installation has worked successfully. Now when you go back to our terminal, we are seeing that we have an applied migration. So we're going to go ahead and create those migrations. I'm going to stop the server, run python manage.py migrate. So this is going to run all the migrations onto our SQLite 3 database. So now once this is done, what we're going to do is to go and create our first app. So we're going to create an app, and an app is what is going to hold a functionality for our notes application. So we're going to say python manage.py, then we're going to start the app. So we're going to run the command start app, then the app we're going to create, let's call it notes. So once this runs, we realize that another folder is created. Now the most important file within our Django project is the settings.py file. This is because it holds all the settings that are needed for our application to work. So we're going to go inside the settings file and try to explore it. So I'm going to come and close this for now. So when you go to our file, we have that this has the Django project settings for all the entire project. So we have the base dar, which basically points to the location of our folder on our machine. We have the secret key, which is good for protecting our application. We also have the debug mode. So this debug mode is set to true when we are developing and set to false for security purposes. You also have allowed hosts. And now another place that's important for you to see is the installed app section. In this installed apps list, we can be able to create various apps such as the Notes app and be able to register them within our project. So I'm going to come to the Notes app, to the Notes, to installed apps, and then add our Notes app. So I'm going to say Notes, then save. Now we can even see the middleware, the URL configurations, the templates, the WSJ application. Now another place we can be able to put our eyes on is the databases. So by default, Django uses the SQLite 3 database, which is a files database that we can be able to see here. So this dictionary kind of shows us where our database is located within our project. So we can be able to set this for other databases such as Postgres, but for now, let's be using SQLite 3 as it can be enough for our development needs. Now we have the password validators, which are within Django. Then we can also go and see the language code, which is the language you're going to be using, the time zone, the static URL that shows where our static files such as the CSS and JS files, and the default auto field. Now this is our settings app, and the most important thing we've done so far is to create our notes app and be able to register it within our settings. So the next thing is we're going to be able to create our first view function. Now view function is a function that returns an HTTP response after sending a request. So we're going to go to check if our server is running. So we're going to run our server by saying python manage.py run server. So we're going to run server. Then we're going to run it at port 8001. So this is going to run our server at this address. We're going to minimize this, and for this moment, let's create our first view function. So we shall go within our notes folder, and we see the layout within our notes folder. We have a views file that's to have our views. If we're to write any tests, you're going to write them in tests.py, and if we're going to write any models, we're going to create them in our models.py file that are going to define our database schema. We have apps, and this basically holds the configuration for our specific app, which is Notes. We have the admin app, the admin file that helps us to register our model in the admin section. Now this init.py shows that this is a Python package. Now another important folder is going to be the migration folder because it holds the specific information about all the database changes you'll be making with time. Now this Xano's app. So the most important thing for now is to create our views. So we're going to go to views.py. When you go to the views.py, what you're going to do is to say we're going to create our first view. So a view is a function. So we're going to create a view function. We're going to call it index, and it usually takes in a request object. So we're going to pass in request as an argument. Now after that, we're going to return a simple HTTP response. Now to return an HTTP response, we're going to use the HTTP response object that is from Django. So we're going to say from Django.http, we're going to import the HTTP response. Now we're going to return this on our server. So we're going to say return. So what this is going to do is to return an HTTP response once our request has been sent. So in this case, we're going to put in hello world. And when we save this, we are going to create a URL on which we're going to map this URL, this view function, so that when you go to that URL, we can be able to return an HTTP response. Now I'm going to go to my Notes app and create a new file. I'm going to create that new file and call it urls.py. Now what this url.py file is going to do is to hold the URL configurations for this specific app, which is Notes. So to do that, we shall need a function called path. So I'm going to import it by saying from Django.urls import path. Now for each app, you can have very many URLs or very many routes you may take. So in this case, we create a URL patterns list that contains a list of those URL patterns for that specific app. So we're going to come and say that our list is going to be URL patterns, and that list is going to contain our URL patterns. So we're going to create a URL patterns list, and the next thing is going to be adding our URL patterns. So I'm going to create a path. Then a path takes in the route, so we're going to write a route. So in this case, it's going to be the route, so it's going to be blank. Now we also need to specify the view function. So I'm going to import the view function by saying uh, from from the current folder, and in the views folder, we're going to import the view function. In this case, we want to import the index function. So we may come and say index, this is the view function. Now we can also say, we can state the name of this view function. So we can say name is going to be equal to index. Now when we save this, now since we've been able to create our URL, but we need a way for Django to know that when you go to this URL, we want to call a function that's index and return a response as defined within this function. So what you need to do is to register our URLs for this app within our main project. So what I'm going to do is to go to the keep project and then go to URLs. Now we have some instructions here on how to register our URL configurations within our project. So I'm going to delete this, and what we shall need to do is to import include from Django.urls. Now I'm going to import include. Now say import include, and now import this. The next thing will be to create the URL patterns for my specific app. So I'll come and say path. This will take in the roots. Then what we shall do is to include not.urls. So we're going to save this. Let's check whether our application is still running. So I'm going to open up the terminal, and that server is still running. Now when you go to our browser and you access that port, when you try to refresh, you see that our response has been returned successfully. In this video, we've been able to create a simple Django view. We've also been able to set up our project. If you feel you've liked this video, please go ahead and leave a like and share this video. Please also leave a comment down in the comment section. Thank you for watching. See you in the next one.